I was sorting through the morning mail that my secretary had left on my desk when my cell phone rang with an incoming call. Only a few individuals knew my phone number, and a quick scan revealed it was my best friend, Lucas Davis. "Hello, Lucas, what can I do for you?" I inquired, still sifting through the mail. "Daniel, can we meet today for lunch?" A quick check of my calendar revealed that I had an opening. "Sure, how about Sardino's at 12:30? "That works. See you then." After alerting my secretary about the lunch in at 12:30 via intercom, I pondered why Lucas wanted to meet. We had lunch together rather frequently because his office was close by. I quickly refocused on the dinner before shifting my concentration to prepping for a staff meeting. I had a half hour. The rest of the morning sped by, and at 12:20, I went to Sardino's. I left my car in a neighborhood location that was easily accessible by foot. I arrived just as the clock struck 12:30 and noticed Lucas sitting alone in a rear booth. He waved to get my attention and stood up to greet me as I neared Lucas. These unplanned lunches are usually fantastic. I smiled as we shook hands and sat down. Lucas and I were pals since high school, a 20-year bond. He and his wife Sophia were close to my wife Scarlett and myself. "Lucas was my favorite tennis partner," agreed. He said. "Although you have the big managerial job, I am just a humble salesman with time on my hands. Lowly salesperson, my foot, you earn more than I do and work more hours." "Don't give me that," I exclaimed laughing. "Okay, I understand. Enough of the flattery. Let us eat." After completing our orders, we talked about recent happenings in our lives and bemoaned our recent golf games. However, I realized he was carrying a burden. As our talk decreased, Lucas abruptly became serious and said something that left me dumbfounded for a few moments. "Daniel, I just returned from Atlanta this morning. I took the first flight out, which required me to leave my hotel by 6 a.m. while on the shuttle to the airport. I noticed a woman in the hotel corridor who looked exactly like Scarlett. She was leaving one room holding her shoes and entering another with a key card. She appeared to have just woken up a little unkempt. I was too astonished to say anything and she vanished fast. The Scarlett has a twin sister or cousin that resembles her." It took me a moment to collect my thoughts. What hotel was this? The downtown Hyatt Regency? "Are you okay?" I must have appeared clearly shaken. "Scarlett is visiting Atlanta on business and staying at the downtown Hyatt Regency." I eventually managed to say, "Oh shit, I'm very sorry Daniel. Perhaps I should have said nothing. Do you remember the room she exited and entered?" "Let me think. It was located on the 6th floor. She exited room 611 and entered 614, something similar to that stuff. Scarlett is meant to be in room 612. Damn, that's rough. Daniel, do you believe she noticed and recognized you?" She looked down the hall at me as I closed my door. The hotel doors create a lot of noise when they lock shut. She gave me a short glance but did not recognize me as she entered the other room. The way she appeared suggested that she had spent the night there and was sneaking back to her room. It's an incredible coincidence that I slept at the same hotel and exited my room just as she crossed the corridor. So she'll be returning this evening. I wonder if she will say anything by now. My appetite was gone and I needed to be alone to contemplate what Lucas had said. It was difficult to misinterpret being observed leaving another hotel room early in the morning. "Look, I need to return to my office. Please do not mention this to anyone, not even Sophia. If Scarlett and I have a problem, I'd want to deal with it discreetly before it becomes public information." Okay, Daniel, I'm very sorry about this. If there is anything I can do, please let me know. I pledged to keep it to myself. I hoped when I saw this is not what it appeared to be. But I believed you needed to know. I'd like to know whether Sophia is participating in anything. Thank you, Lucas. I'll keep you updated when additional information becomes available. We exchanged goodbyes and I returned to my office. The remainder of my afternoon was a blur as my mind replayed what Lucas had told me. Allow me to take a moment to explain Scarlett and my relationship. We met in college while she was pursuing her BS in computer management and I was pursuing my BS in civil engineering. Our paths intersected during one of our overlapping courses. And we immediately hit it off. By our senior year, we were living together and married shortly after graduation. We've been married for 10 years and our intimate relationship has always been busy and fulfilling. As far as I knew, she never complained. Scarlett is 32 and really gorgeous. Despite being pounced on frequently, she stays in shape by exercising regularly and eating a good diet. I had entire faith in her faithfulness until today. She works as a senior buyer at a local manufacturing plant that makes computer components, which requires her to travel several times a year to meet with vendors. It's hard to believe she would jeopardize our marriage by being unfaithful. I work with a national contractor that specializes in residential and commercial construction. I am currently the assistant manager for the heating and air conditioning department. Although I've gained expertise in various other areas of the organization. At 33 I don't consider myself very attractive, but I'm in terrific shape thanks to Scarlett's influence. Her dedication to fitness pushed me to continue exercising with regular gym sessions and tennis. We reside in a condominium but have been considering purchasing a home since Scarlett is concerned about her biological clock. If she wants children, I'm on board because I've always believed that having children is an essential component of a meaningful relationship. Without children, our relationship is primarily around companionship. I've never considered other options since I couldn't handle the idea of hurting Scarlett or bringing an STD home. It wouldn't be worth it, especially because Scarlett makes me very happy at home. Admittedly I am tempted, but I have always managed to keep my priorities straight after lunch with Lucas. I sat in my office reflecting on his revelation and thought struck me. Why not learn more about Scarlett's current trip from her boss, Sebastian White? Scarlett and I had lunch with Sebastian and his wife Natalie several times before, so I felt safe reaching out. Sebastian, this is Daniel Thompson. Got him in it? Sure. Daniel, what up? I'm a little ashamed to ask, but could you please have your travel department verify what time Scarlett's plane lands this evening? I wrote it down but misplaced it. I didn't want to call her and explain I'd forgotten the information, so I decided to ask you instead. Of course, Daniel. Give me a moment. I could hear him talk with his secretary before returning to the line. While she is checking, how have you been? We really need to have dinner again soon. I have been excellent. I'm very busy at work. By the way, Scarlett and I are discussing starting a family. I added with a laugh. That is fantastic. Daniel, it is about time. Natalie and I have 2 children. And we could not be happier. That sounds great. By the way, do you know who accompanied Scarlett on her trip? I feel worried when she travels alone. She took Matthew Hill again. He's a recent college graduate and she's been showing him the ropes. I attempted to laugh it off. How many times did they travel together? This is the 3rd time Sebastian has returned with flight information. Airline flight number and estimated arrival time. Thank you, Sebastian. I probably don't have anything to worry about. Scarlett is self-sufficient and capable of managing her own affairs. You are welcome. Daniel, do not worry about it. Don't discuss our chat. We are both aware of the importance of maintaining positive relationships with our spouses. He replied, chuckling. Absolutely. Have a wonderful day, Sebastian. After hanging up, I sat at my desk, wondering if Scarlett was up to anything on her trips. Matthew appeared like the most plausible suspect. She had never mentioned anyone traveling with her previously, which could indicate she was hiding something. However, I had to proceed carefully, confronting her without concrete evidence may backfire. I planned to see her at the airport that evening. She usually takes a camp home, so showing up unexpectedly would allow me to measure her reaction. I could always tell her I missed her and wished to surprise her. I stepped back from the security checkpoint, waiting for Scarlett to get through so we could return home. I had been watching the arrivals board and was expecting her at any moment. The first people began to pass through security, and it wasn't long before I saw her. But she was not alone. A tall, gorgeous young man stood beside her, his arm across her shoulders. I swiftly slipped into a nearby storefront to continue spying as they made their way to baggage claim. They continued to talk animatedly, unaware to my presence as I followed stealthily. My rage simmered as I managed to take a few photos of them using my cell phone. When they arrived at baggage claim, my worst suspicions were confirmed when they gathered their luggage. They had a passionate kiss full with lust and tenderness fit for lovers. I was grateful for the evidence on my phone. But the wrath I felt within was excruciating. I could not wait any longer to confront her. Scarlett turned to go and find a taxi. She noticed me move forward. She grinned at first, but her face became pale as she noticed the sight in my eyes. As I neared Scarlett, she froze, indecisive and shocked, realizing what she had just witnessed. Do not come home. Get yourself a place for the night or visit your parents. I do not want to see or talk to you until I am ready. Know that I'll be consulting with an attorney. I turned to walk away, leaving her astonished, but before I could get very far, she gathered her calm and screamed out. Daniel, wait, she rushed to catch up. It wasn't what you were thinking. It was simply a friendly kiss. We can't get divorced over that. I turned back to face her. A small audience had assembled to observe the unfolding spectacle. Matthew had conveniently vanished. Yes, we can, Scarlett. That was not a kiss. You should give to another man, especially if I am not present and we can split over it. I am sure there was more involved. Adultery is one of the reasons why irreconcilable conflicts might exist. The mention of infidelity caused her to pale even more. Honey, I would never do that to you. It was only a kiss. Tell me, Scarlett. Whose bed were you in last night? Scarlett turned as white as could be while denying any inappropriate behavior. I slept in my own bed. You've got to believe me, she cried out. I decided to try a small bluff to see if I could get a confession out of her. Lucas arrived in Atlanta at the Hyatt Regency this morning. He observed you leave Scarlett, your traveling companion's chamber. If you have a legitimate reason for leaving his room at 6 a.m. carrying your shoes, I might be able to ignore the indecent kiss I just witnessed. Scarlett was stunned for a moment and briefly glanced at the audience before responding. She was clearly aware she had been apprehended. Daniel, we need to address this in private. Can I come home with you? I promise. If we can't fix this after discussing for half an hour, I'll go. I do not think so. If you can explain why Lucas spotted you leaving that room at 6 a.m., I'll consider discussing further. I'm not giving you time to make up a tale. Now it's either the truth or farewell. Our marriage depends on you delivering a sensible explanation. Right away. She glanced at me despondently before responding. I am sorry, Daniel. I honestly don't have an excuse that would satisfy you. I adore you and do not want to lose what we have together. Please allow me to come home, still boiling with wrath. I wanted to get revenge at her by publicly embarrassing her. It did not disturb me that I was exposing my own anguish. I needed to expose her as an adulteress and let her bear the disgrace. I apologized to Scarlett. Right now I don't see how we can make this work. My trust in you was broken. A good marriage is based on trust. It would be a shame to continue after what you've accomplished. I refuse to spend the rest of my life wondering about you when you aren't present. Let's terminate this now so I can get on with my life. I turned and walked away. I heard someone clapping in the background and another guy who was listening gave me a thumbs up as I exited the terminal. I did not glance back. As I got into my car in the short-term parking lot, tears flowed down my face. I couldn't drive for half an hour because I was fighting the temptation to go back and get her. In that moment, I realized how much I loved and needed her more than I knew the weekend passed in a blur. I don't recall much about it other than watching a lot of old movies on TV. Possibly in an attempt to relive a nicer time. Thankfully, Scarlett did not attempt to contact me. If she had called, I would have most likely hung up. As the days passed, I began to feel guilty about subjecting her to public humiliation. However, I justified it as a form of retaliation for her betrayal, which relieved my conscience little. Monday morning came after a sleepless night. I still hadn't heard from Scarlett, so I knew it was time to make a preliminary decision about our marriage. My employer said a few days ago that he needed someone to handle the Seattle office temporarily for a few weeks. Liliana, the normal manager, was leaving on maternity leave. And as far as I knew, no one had filled the position. Sometimes a part might allow me to calm down and organize my ideas. When I arrived at work, I visited my boss's office to inquire about the Seattle Post. No, I have not filled it yet, he replied. Are you interested? We need someone out there shortly. I'm interested, I said. How soon would I need to arrive? I do not mean to pry, but I am assuming you have discussed this with Scarlett, and she is fine with you being gone. For 6 to 8 weeks, he asked. Scarlett and I have separated, so I now have time to consider alternative options for my future. I explained. I am sad to hear that. I assumed you two were going to start a family soon for reasons that I will not get into. That won't happen anytime soon. I need this time to reflect on my marriage and plan my next moves. All right, I do not mean to take advantage of your personal situation, but we need you in Seattle as soon as feasible. You'll need to catch up on operations before Liliana goes in less than 2 weeks. Anything you can do to increase your availability would be greatly appreciated. I should be able to get out there in 3 or 4 days. I just need some time to wrap up loose ends in my personal life. Trying to give David an update on the Kingston project before you go, and you may use the balance of your time off to prepare. So do I need to take care of anything this morning? But I will meet with David after lunch. He stood up and shook my hand. Thank you for stepping forward, Daniel. I appreciate it. I am sad about you and Scarlett, and I hope everything works out for you. Keep me updated on your progress, and let me know if you encounter any problems. The remainder of the morning was a frenzy of activity. I focused on securing half of our joint bank and investment accounts in case Scarlett decided our marriage was actually over since our confrontation at the airport. I hadn't heard from her and didn't know where she was, but I anticipated to hear from her shortly. In the afternoon, I met with my coworker David to brief him on the project I had been working on. He was astonished to learn that I was taking the position in Seattle. Apparently, my manager had not been informed of my personal concerns. "Scarlett, how do you feel about being gone for a few months?" he asked. "My wife would be outraged if I did something like that. Of course, we have 2 children, so I can't leave her alone with them. We didn't want a signal that we were likely to split." I left my response unclear. "We're dealing with some personal issues, so I'm taking this time apart to let things calm down." "That is unfortunate. I hope the separation helps," he said sympathetically. The remainder of the afternoon was spent discussing the project's development and presenting David to important staff before winding up for the day. I promised him I will be around for a few more days. If you have any questions, please phone myself. It's Monday now, and I plan to leave by Thursday. On my way home, I decided against cooking and instead stopped at TGI Fridays for dinner. After a lunch and a few cold drinks, I resumed my journey home. Eating out alone was unusual. But given the situation of my marriage, I expected to have to grow used to it for a while, if not eternally. When I got home, I discovered Scarlett's car wasn't in the garage. She must have stopped over to pick it up, most likely carrying some clothes and personal belongings with her barely through the door. My cell phone rang. When Scarlett's name appeared on the screen, I hesitated before responding. "What is it, Scarlett?" I asked, attempting to maintain a neutral tone. "Daniel. May I come over so we can talk? I went there earlier with my father to pick up my car and some stuff. I'm staying with my parents for now," she remarked, her voice tinged with melancholy. "Scarlett, I don't see much to talk about. I am not really in the mood to listen right now," I responded to Kirby. "I'm very sorry, Daniel. I know I've hurt you deeply, but we need to give our marriage another shot. If we could simply talk, I'm confident we could work things out to save our relationship," she pleaded. "Scarlett, you violated our agreement. Right now, I'm too upset to even consider staying together. I suggest you do not call me again when I am ready to speak." "I will call you." I heard her sigh with resignation. "All right, Daniel. I will wait. But can you make it soon? Just so you know, Mom and Dad aren't pleased with me either." "Scarlett, I will tell you what. You are welcome to come over on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. We can discuss stuff then." I hadn't planned to be there, but I left a message to express my feelings. I merely needed to find out what the message would be. "Okay, Daniel, thank you. I love you." I couldn't resist writing a last chapter even if it felt immature. "You can also bring your friend and relax in what used to be her bed if it is your thing. Daniel, it was a one-time error. And I promise it will never happen again. You can rely on me for that. I'm not sure how I'm expected to trust you or believe this was our first conversation. You'd better be prepared to confront the issue of trust because yours is currently zero. How can I consider raising a family with you if I don't trust you? Daniel, I understand and do not blame you. Please give me a chance." "Oh, goodbye, Scarlett." I hung up the telephone. We're done with the conversation. The following day was frantic. I arranged a divorce lawyer appointment early Wednesday morning and Spent the rest of the day packing all of my clothes except those I needed for my trip to Seattle. And personal things. I spent much of the day moving everything to a storage facility. I was unsure whether I'd ever return to this house. It was packed with too many wonderful memories, now tainted by her betrayal. I subsequently stayed at a motel near the airport for the next 2 nights. On my way to the divorce attorney the next morning, I went by the office to pick up my vacation itinerary and have one last conversation with my boss. So Daniel, enjoy your time out there and say hello to Liliana for me. She's very impressive. I believe they are training her for larger and greater things. I met her once during a corporate retreat. She's intelligent, charming and rather attractive. She must be married now if she is expecting a child. Anyway, send her my compliments. You never know. She might become our boss eventually. We will do. Take care and I'll see you in a few months. We shook hands and I exited the office to meet with the divorce attorney. I arrived just on time for my appointment and was quickly ushered in. The attorney, an experienced elderly woman who has undoubtedly handled many divorce cases, began by asking me to explain my circumstances and goals. I described my finding of Scarlett's infidelity and indicated that I had accepted an out-of-state transfer for a few months. I need to know my options, I added. You have several options, she remarked. First, you might choose to do nothing and resume your marriage when you return. However, accepting her adultery without intensive counseling may not be an option. Another alternative is to file for a formal separation and see if the time apart helps to heal the marriage. Finally, considering your circumstances and the length of your absence, you may consider filing for divorce if you continue to adore your wife. I would recommend drafting a separation agreement. This can act as the foundation for a future divorce and preserve your assets while you are apart. It can also specify obligations for both parties. For example, you could ask her to consult a psychoanalyst to determine what caused the infidelity and whether she is likely to repeat it. However, you may be required to vow to give the marriage another try for a set length of time. If things still do not work out, the divorce might then be based on the provisions of the settlement agreement. I thought of my feelings for Scarlett and the bliss we had once enjoyed. After careful consideration, I directed her to create the separation agreement she suggested. I explained what I desired in terms of asset distribution, including giving Scarlett the heavily mortgaged condo and contents, except for my personal stuff and a few other objects, which may still be there. I had already decided on a 50-50th share of our finances, which she documented in the agreement. I didn't want to restart our marriage without some certainty of its chances of success. After therapy, the therapist would determine the duration of the therapy. Scarlett also needed to record in writing how many times she had been with her lover, and how many lovers there had been since our marriage. I suspected there was only one, but I wanted her written explanation so that if anything came up later that she hadn't mentioned, we could move forward with the divorce. The lawyer listened intently to my situation, taking notes as I stated. When I finished, she told me that she would have the agreement completed and ready for my signature that afternoon. I agreed, though I felt apprehension about what I would do if I realized Scarlett had taken several boyfriends during her marriage, and that I had been duped several times. After leaving the attorney's office, I called my friend Lucas and asked if I might stop over that evening to speak with him and Sophia. He confirmed that they'd both be home, so I told him I'd be there at 7:30. After lunch, I returned to the attorney's office. She had created a separation agreement for me to peruse. After reviewing it, I asked a few minor changes to my conditions which her secretary swiftly accommodated. I signed the document. I then requested that the agreement be given to my wife at her home the following evening at 7 p.m. She would expect to speak with me, but I believed the separation agreement would cover everything I needed to say. The lawyer confirmed that it could be arranged for an extra charge and I agreed. She also said she'd keep me updated on the legal proceedings while I was away. I ensured she had my cell phone number in case she needed to reach me. After leaving the lawyer's office, I had one more chore to complete. I made a call to Scarlett's supervisor, Sebastian White. Sebastian, this is Daniel Thompson. Oh, hello, Daniel. What can I do for you? Sebastian, there's something you should know. Scarlett and I are parting ways because I learned she was having an affair with your other employee, Matthew Hill. When they were traveling together, there was a moment of astonished quiet. Oh my God, Daniel. I am so sad. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we have a stringent anti-fraternity policy for our staff, which Scarlett and Matthew agreed to when they were employed. Can you prove this? I have a witness who observed Scarlett leave the Hills hotel room at 6 a.m. Scarlett admitted to me that she was in Atlanta on Monday, plus I have images of them kissing inappropriately in the airport on Monday evening. That clearly shows an inappropriate level of intimacy. I'll speak with our HR department first, followed by Scarlett. Okay, Sebastian. After hanging up, I felt satisfied that I had taken action against Matthew. I was curious to see what would happen. That evening in Lucas's house, I discussed what had been going on between Scarlett and me. They sympathized with our separation and my planned extended absence. I believe that separating for a few months will allow us both to reflect on our marriage and determine how to move forward. I remarked, you might be right, Daniel. Lucas responded, we will miss hanging out. You've been our best buddies for so long. I'm not sure what we'll do without you both. Let's hope Scarlett and I can reconcile in a few months. If it comes down to it, I'll be counting on you to help us heal our marriage. You can rely on it, Daniel. Sophie reassured me. I will call Scarlett and talk to her. Do you know where she is staying? I'm sure she is devastated. She informed me she was with her parents. Do you have her cell phone number? Oh, yes, I will call her tonight. Okay, I should get moving. I'd like to hear from you people while I'm away and get updates about Scarlett. If she continues to see that guy or anyone else, there is no prospect of reconciliation. We'll do whatever we can, Daniel. Take care and enjoy your trip. Lucas stated that I left their residence and returned to my motel. That night, I felt like I had completed as many loose ends as possible before my departure to Seattle the next morning. The journey to Seattle was unremarkable. After picking up a rental car at the airport, I drove to my extended stay hotel, which was conveniently positioned approximately 2 blocks from the office, allowing for an easy walk each day provided the weather cooperated. After checking in and unpacking, my stomach told me it was time to eat. Tired from the long travel, I decided to eat at the hotel's restaurant. Looking at my watch during the lunch, I noticed that it was 8 p.m. back home and Scarlett should have received my message by now. I had kept my phone turned off all day and decided to check for any texts. Unsurprisingly, Scarlett missed 4 calls while my colleague Liliana missed 1. I started by listening to Liliana's message. Daniel, welcome to Seattle. I look forward to seeing you in the morning. Come in early and we'll go for breakfast together. If this is an issue, Please call me on my cell phone. I'll see you tomorrow, regardless. Bye. Scarlett's texts were all variations of the same frantic request for me to call her as soon as possible. I decided to complete my supper and head back to my room before responding. After a leisurely breakfast and a cup of coffee, I returned to my room. When I arrived, I settled in and called Scarlett. I intended to keep the talk as dispassionate as possible so that my rage did not dominate the tone of our discourse. I received your mail, Scarlett. Did you receive the breakup paperwork at the house? Yes, I did. I wanted to express how much I appreciate you giving our marriage another shot. Could you please tell me where you are and when you will be returning home? I'm in Seattle, handling the office while the manager is on maternity leave. I'll probably be here for a few months. This time apart, we'll offer you an opportunity to begin therapy. Perhaps we can find out what has been going on. I have already started looking into it, honey. I'm hoping to get the name of a psychotherapist who can see me as soon as possible in the next few days. Please update me on your progress. I will phone you every evening, Daniel, to let you know. All right, I'm exhausted and should go to bed. Good night. Before you leave, I'd like to tell you that I spoke with my employer Sebastian White today. He indicated that he had spoken with you and was really dissatisfied with my behavior with Matthew. I have been officially punished and will no longer be traveling for the company. I was shifted to the finance department because Matthew was still on probation. He got fired. I feel terrible about everything, especially the hurt I've caused you. I'm even thinking about quitting because the reason for my transfer will most likely come out. And I'm not sure I can face my coworkers. I'm sorry, Scarlett, but I don't feel too sympathetic just now. Good night. Good night. Daniel, I love you. I did not react and simply hung up. I hoped my silence indicated that I was still quite unhappy with her. I was pleased to have exacted some vengeance on Matthew and Scarlett as well. I enjoyed a decent night's sleep and left early the next morning. After a shower, I walked to work, arriving at 8 a.m. The office did not open until 9 o'clock. There was a car in the manager's parking slot, so I knew Liliana was there. As the office door closed behind me, she smiled and offered her hand. Hello, Daniel. It has been a while. Welcome to Seattle. I was taken aback when I took her hand. She was almost as tall as I was, with shoulder-length red hair and a noticeable pregnant belly. She exuded the bright warmth of imminent parenthood, and her brilliant green eyes captivated me. Liliana, it's nice to see you again. Are you ready to go to breakfast? I'm starving. Let's go, she said. Walking toward the door I just entered. I followed her as she locked the door behind us. We don't need to rush back, she explained. Grace, my assistant, will be here shortly to handle everything. Are you in the mood for pancakes? That sounds wonderful. Let's head to IHOP then. As I got into her car, I was struck by her confident demeanor. Liliana understood exactly who she was and what she desired. After clenching her stomach behind the wheel, she drove easily and competently to her destination. During the journey, we discussed mundane issues such as the weather and traffic. When she arrived at the restaurant, she directed the group to a booth in the rear. We placed our orders and relaxed with our coffee. It was then that I realized she was wearing a stunning diamond engagement ring but no wedding band. Curious, I chose not to dig into anything so private. However, she did not hesitate to inquire about my condition. Daniel, what does your wife think about you being out here? I presume she is fine with it. Actually, we are currently separated. This time apart is intended to let us both reflect on our Marriage. Oh, I am sad to hear that. I did not mean to pry. I noticed you are still wearing your wedding ring. I intend to keep it on until our marriage is properly dissolved by a court order. I'm very sad about your marriage. I hope everything works out for you. But while we're on the subject of personal lives, I'd want to clarify my current situation. You don't need to do that. I swiftly intervened. I am pregnant, which I suppose is pretty obvious. You've obviously noticed that I have an engagement ring, but no wedding band. My fiancé was in the Army Reserve and was called up to Iraq. I discovered I was pregnant after he had already departed. It turns out that birth control pills did not work for me. So here I am, feeling like a bloated cow. You do not look like a bloated cow. In fact, I believe there is nothing more lovely than a pregnant woman. When do you anticipate your fiancé to return? He's actually back. She spoke, her voice laced with regret. He is interred at the Tahoma National Cemetery in Kent, Washington. He was slain by an IED after only 3 months there. Oh, my goodness. I'm so sorry. I exclaimed, immediately reaching out to take her hand. That must have been horrible to you. I'm done sobbing. I'm now focused on life for our child. It's a boy and he'll be named after his father. Wow. It is incredible. When is he due? 2 weeks from yesterday, officially, but it could take several days. In any case, that is why I need to get you caught up on our operations here as soon as possible. I've been quite nervous till they found someone to cover for me. So I'm here now and we can begin. Anytime you're ready. We talked while we ate, and once we finished our meals, we sat down and drank our coffee together before heading to the workplace. Liliana stated that there is something you should know. My assistant Grace had been hoping to take over while I'm abroad. She's tremendously ambitious, but we've just been together for about 6 months. She is obviously intelligent and has recently graduated from college, but she lacks experience. With a few years under her belt, she'd be an ideal candidate for such tasks. That is why I particularly asked for someone more experience and more maturity. She understandably feels neglected because I did not offer her the position. So she may come across as bitter first. She is nonetheless a hard worker who is well versed in her profession. Grace will be important to you, and I doubt she would be vindictive enough to undermine your efforts. Thank you for the heads up. I sincerely appreciate it. I said, one reason I wanted to eat breakfast away from the workplace was to discuss this privately. The other was just getting to know you before you started. So are you prepared to dive in? I am ready. I believe working with you will be fun. Even if only for a short time. We left the restaurant and headed to the workplace as soon as we arrived. A young woman was speaking with the secretary outside Liliana in his office. She went over to us with a less than welcoming expression. Grace, I would like you to meet Daniel Thompson. He'll be covering for me while I'm away. Grace scowled slightly rather than smiling, confirming Liliana's assessment of her attitude. She was a brunette with stunning blue eyes, a well-proportioned thin form and appealing legs. Nice to meet you, Mr. Thompson, she remarked, extending her hand for a shake. It's Daniel, Grace, and it's good to meet you as well. Liliana has spoken highly of your work. I'll rely on you to assist keep things moving smoothly. Washes away. She'll have a lot on her mind without thinking about the office. My statement made her flush, so she reacted. Thank you. I will do my best. I know Liliana will be counting on us to keep things running until she returns. Grace has my whole attention. Liliana smiled and said. Grace, I'll be in my office with Daniel going over operations to get him up to speed. After that, could you show him around? Then the three of us may have lunch. All right, I'll see you later, Mr. Daniel, she said with a slight smile. Maybe Grace was starting to warm up, at least I hope so. Liliana verified my suspicions once we were behind the closed walls of her office. I think I perceive a slight fall from Grace. Let us hope it lasts. Now, let us get down to business. Once you're fully up to speed, I'll be relieved for the next few hours. We dived into operations, studying our most significant clients and suppliers and gaining a better grasp of the office workers. After we finished, Liliana contacted Grace to present me to the team. After that, we went to lunch and resumed our talk about office management and the complexities of conducting business in Seattle. Grace joined us, and I made a concerted effort to ensure she had an important role in the conversation. Liliana was correct about Grace. She was not only intelligent and skilled, but she also demonstrated a lot of potential. Her combination of femininity and almost overpowering attitude made every interaction with her interesting. I couldn't help but notice she wasn't wearing any rings on her left hand. If I hadn't been so much older and married, I might have been tempted. Ah well. We returned to the office after lunch, and I continued to review the operational processes with Liliana, despite the fact that I was already aware with the most of them due to the company's management rules. Liliana appeared to be determined to pursue every possible avenue. She had also integrated some of her own original ideas, which could benefit other offices within the organization. It was evident that my stay here would be both informative and interesting, with two ambitious and knowledgeable ladies keeping a careful check on my work. Liliana became clearly exhausted later in the day. I urged that she go home and rest. She was plainly fatigued, and with Grace's help, I insisted she rest. She reluctantly agreed and prepared to go. To save her the trouble of preparing dinner, I asked if she wanted to join me for pizza that evening. I explained that it would save her time cooking while also providing me with some companionship. Her mood improved with the suggestion, and she agreed. I received her home address and phone number and offered to pick her up at 7. Grace appeared happy with my invitation to Liliana. Grace spoke openly about her life after Liliana departed. I am delighted you asked her out. She has been quite lonely following the loss of her fiancé, and she has been immersing herself in work ever since. It is past time for her to consider her own health and that of her child. Does she have any friends or family nearby who can assist her? Her parents live in San Diego, and she is their only child. Her mother intends to come once the baby is born to help her. Her fiancé's best buddy has been checking on her, but he's now away. She doesn't have many other pals. And I'm too far away to be any assistance. That's why I'm delighted you're nearby and volunteer to take her to dinner. I will do my best to provide extra assistance, as I become acquainted with the office and its clients. We should be able to reduce her workload so she can focus on preparing for the birth. Now how about you get me up on the office finances? We spent the remainder of the afternoon reviewing the financials, and I returned to my hotel at closing time. Before leaving, Grace informed me of Lillian's intentions for the remainder of my orientation. Every day we'll meet for lunch with some of our key clients and suppliers. Lilian wants to get you up to speed as soon as possible in case she has to depart early. We arranged the majority of the appointments for next week. Do you think you can handle it? She inquired with a grin. I suppose I can manage, I responded, smiling. Great. See you tomorrow. We departed together and I waited for her to lock up and get into her car. She waved as she drove away. I found myself thinking that Grace was someone I'd like to get to know more despite the fact that she is rather young. Back at the hotel, I had a shower and decided to lie down for a quick nap, setting an alarm in case. I'm glad I did because it jolted me awake from a deep sleep an hour later. I guess I was more weary than I anticipated as I immediately changed into trousers and a polo shirt. I drove to the address Lillian gave me. Rental Autos. GPS directed me right to her location. An upmarket condominium complex featuring a pool and tennis courts. It was just 7 p.m. When I knocked on her door, she looked refreshed when she answered. Dressed casually in maternity slacks and shirt. "Wow," I exclaimed. "I don't normally get that reaction," she remarked, smiling. "You're gorgeous," I told her. "Thank you, Daniel. I don't hear it very often in my situation and I certainly appreciate the boost to my ego. Come inside." I walked into her condo and followed her to the living room. "Do not worry, Lillian. Your condition just adds to your appeal. I think you and I will get along just fine. Now I'm scared that I won't be as dazzling as you claim. After I deliver the baby. Have a seat. May I get you something to drink? I'm driving, so Coke would be nice if you had any. I have Diet Pepsi. Will it work?" "That is perfect." She entered the next kitchen. And our talk proceeded. "What did you think about Grace? I noticed that you two seemed to get along. She was anxious that you would impose your own ideas on running the office, but I'm delighted you included her in the conversations. She has plenty to offer. You do not have to worry about the office while you are away. Grace and I should be able to handle everything just well. And if we run into any problems, you're just a call away." Lillian laughed when she returned with our drinks. I noticed she was also holding a Pepsi. I guess I'll be too preoccupied with the new baby to think about the office. Motherhood is going to be an entirely new learning experience for me. I looked at a few images on the table. One image showed her standing next to a man in an army uniform, a captain with blonde hair. They both seemed really delighted. I assumed their baby would be beautiful. In the other photo, the same man was dressed casually beside Lillian and the towering African American men. "That's a picture of me and Sebastian, my fiancé," she explained, pointing to the man in the army uniform. "The other one is with Dylan Robinson, his best friend. By the way, if you need anything at any point, please phone me. The hotel is about a 10-minute drive away and I am available at all times. I don't mind 3M calls," I said her. She laughed again. "I may just take you up on that. I've been wondering who I should contact if something happens when the baby decides it's time. Dylan was meant to be here to assist, but he is on deployment for the Air Force in Germany. He intends to return in a month. He's been a shoulder to weep on since I learned Sebastian had been killed. Then your backup plan is decided." I was curious about her relationship with Dylan, but I figured it wasn't my place to ask because she didn't clarify further. We completed our drinks and proceeded to the small pizzeria down the street. We talked for hours, sharing anecdotes about our lives and keeping each other up to date on our current situations. Lillian was someone I felt comfortable confiding in, so I told her about my problematic marriage. She listened sympathetically and shared her own heartbreak over her fiancé. She had learned of his death from his parents as she was not registered as his next of kin. Shortly after receiving that tragic news, she realized she was pregnant. After roughly 2 hours of conversing, Lillian was clearly fatigued. The restaurant owners were also indicating that they were preparing to close. I accompanied Lillian back to her condominium. I led her to the door and she gave me a soft kiss on the cheek before going inside. I waved goodbye and headed back to my hotel. Upon entering my room, I noticed the phone's blinking light, indicating that I received a message. Scarlett asked me to call her as soon as possible. I called her number right away. "Daniel," she answered. "Yes, Scarlett, it's me." He requested me to call when I arrived. "Is there something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. I just wanted to hear your voice. I'm deeply sorry for what I did with Matthew. I know I've profoundly harmed you and I can't convey how much I detest myself for it or how terrible I am. I'm not sure why I did it. I had a couple of beers after dinner to unwind following a stressful day with the supplier, and before I knew it, I was in Matthew's bed. I'm not sure what came over me. I didn't want to engage into a lengthy conversation about it straight now. That would happen later. Have you reviewed the separation papers? Have you got any questions? No, that's another topic I'd want to discuss. I detest that the separation papers bring us closer to divorce, but I'll agree to anything you want, especially if it means saving our marriage in the long run. I really love you. I'm not sure how I could let myself go from my love for you and have an affair with another man. I may never really comprehend, but I have an appointment with a psychologist next week to attempt to figure things out. I've also scheduled a lie detector test to ensure that my night with Matthew in Atlanta was the last time I ever cheated on you. I hope this fulfills the criterion in the separation agreement and allows us to move forward. Okay, Scarlett, I'm not going to say I love you because I'm not sure I do anymore. We'll have to see if time can mend the damage you've done. I'll chat to you soon. Good night. I heard her sob as I hung up. Over the next few days, I continued to work at the office. Liliana eventually let Grace in me take over. She usually arrived mid-morning and left mid-afternoon. As the days passed, he appeared to be more rested. We had lunch meetings with major clients and suppliers and all looked pleased with Liliana's operations. His absence, with her due date approached, the workplace routine settled with me directing operations and Grace handling the majority of staff interactions. Liliana and I ate supper together most nights, which kept her company and prevented me from eating alone. I frequently brought takeout pizza or chicken, which we would eat at her condo during these dinners. We talked a variety of issues and I was astounded by her understanding of my interests. When it was time to leave, she kissed me on the cheek, indicating that she enjoyed my company. I liked hers, too. I continued to phone Scarlett in the nights. Our conversation was brief. She continually expressed regret and apologized for her mistakes. I eventually urged her to stop, not sure if she was remorseful for her acts or just got caught. She acknowledged attending a psychologist and making progress with her concerns. I maintained in touch with Lucas and Sophia, who informed me that Scarlett was keeping close to home and had confessed her indiscretion to Sophia. According to Sophia, Scarlett appeared to be truly sorry and concerned about losing me. Despite everything, it was difficult not to feel compassion for her. About 10 days after coming in Seattle, I was awakened at 4 a.m. via a phone call. "Hello," I responded groggily. "Daniel, this is Liliana. I believe it is time to go to the hospital." I was suddenly aware. "I'll be there in around 10 minutes. Be prepared to go." "I will be ready." I had been laying clothing ready for such an occasion, so it just took a minute to get dressed and go to the rental car. 8 minutes later, I arrived in front of her condominium complex. She waited in the lobby with her small suitcase. It only took a few seconds to get her in the car. And we were on our way to the hospital. Her contractions were only a few minutes apart, so I knew it would be close. I had carefully planned our route to the hospital, so we arrived at the emergency entrance swiftly despite the early hour. I rushed in and alerted the receptionist about the problem. An orderly soon provided a wheelchair and assisted Liliana into it. Because she had pre-registered, we skipped the paperwork and went directly to the delivery area. I followed her as she was wheeled along, but when they realized I wasn't her father, they directed me to a waiting area where I spent the next 2 hours. During that time, I called Grace to provide an update. Impatient, I approached the receptionist to ask for Liliana. "Hi, is there any word about Liliana Perez?" "Oh, she had a baby boy and they're both doing well. Can I see her?" I wondered why I hadn't been notified sooner. "I apologize, she has requested no visitors." Strange, I thought, is the baby okay? Can I see him? The infant is okay. You can find him in the nursery down the hall. Thank you. I walked down the hall to the nursery and looked through the glass, looking for Liliana, this baby. There were multiple infants, so I examined each bassinet for the surname Perez. I was taken aback when I eventually saw it. The baby was clearly black. It was then that the truth struck me. My God, it's no surprise that she doesn't want guests. How will she handle this? I stood there astonished. Grace approached full of excitement. "Which one is he?" "She is not seeing any visitors right now." I pointed at the Perez bassinet. She gasped at what I had just seen. "Oh my, are you certain there isn't an error?" I responded by knocking on the nursery door. A friendly aide responded and I asked her to confirm the identity of the Perez baby. She checked the tag on the baby's ankle and nodded to confirm the surname on the bassinet. Grace behind me exclaimed, "Oh no, she must be devastated. I've got to see her." She turned and went back up the hall and I followed. At the nurse's station, I saw which room she was in. She informed me over her shoulder. "Let me speak to her alone." I nodded in accord. Grace was more capable of handling this than I was. Suddenly I remembered the office and realized no one would be available to open it. "You go ahead and talk to her. I will go over and open the office," I told her. "I will see you later." She nodded and entered Lillian's room, ignoring the "no visitors" sign. Grace arrived at the office shortly before lunchtime. She entered his office, where I was seated, and closed the door. "So, what is the story?" I asked. "The father's name is Dylan." She claimed she was so devastated when Sebastian left for Iraq that she had no idea what she was doing. She and Sebastian made love several times the night before he left, hoping that the baby was his. She doesn't know what to do and is seriously considering placing the baby for adoption. I believe she should consult her father before making that decision. I know I mentioned it to her. I hate to say it, but if Sebastian had come home to find her with another man's baby, I doubt she would have had a happy ending. No, I do not think so either. It's amazing how we can screw up our lives and only blame ourselves. How is she doing when you left? Calm her. But she needs to control her emotions and figure this out. Dylan is supposed to return in a few weeks and they'll have to figure out what to do about the baby. I was struck by Grace's maturity in dealing with the situation. I'm impressed with how mature you are about everything. Most people your age would be confused. She burst into laughter. How old do you believe I am? I felt as if I were on thin ice, or 22. I'm 26. Oh, I apologize. You look very young, and Lillian mentioned you were a recent college graduate. So I assumed. She laughed again. I like the part about looking younger. I recently completed my MBA at Wharton. I felt like sliding under the desk. I'm very sorry. Wow. I feel extremely embarrassed. This is going to cost you a dinner. When do you want to pay up? Trying to regain my composure, I responded. I recognize my error. So if you're free tonight, we can do it. Then that sounds good to me. But let's visit Liliana first. She sent. They'd be sending her home tomorrow with the baby. She called her mother while I was there, and she'll be flying in tomorrow morning. I promised to pick her up at the airport. That sounds wonderful. We may visit Liliana after work and then go to supper. All right, I need to get to work now. I had lunch at the hospital before I came in. She added, opening my office door and going out. The rest of the day went nicely, and we met at 5 p.m. to proceed to the hospital. The no visiting sign was gone from Liliana's door. Grace stepped in first, requesting me to wait outside while she checked on Liliana. She reappeared shortly and waved me inside. Entering wearily, I saw Liliana sitting up in bed, smiling. Albeit her eyes were a touch red from previous weeping. She seemed pleased now, cradling her son in her arms. How are you doing, Liliana? I asked. It's better now. Thanks. I realized I had someone who needed me, and I needed to get my act together to care for him. Would you want to see him? She folded back the blanket still covering his head. The baby's black hair and olive complexion contrasted sharply with the lioness. He was sleeping comfortably and seems comfortable. Liliana, he looks stunning. I thanked her. I'm quite proud of him. All of the nurses say he's beautiful. I inquired, feeling somewhat forward. Have you made him yet? Yes, he is going to be Liam Dylan Perez. I named him after both my father and the baby's father. That's a great name. I responded with a kind smile. How are you feeling right now, Grace? Inquired. Do you believe you'll be ready to go home tomorrow? I'm feeling pretty good, though I'm still a little sore, she said, blushing as she looked at me. We sat and spoke for a long until Liliana became exhausted. The baby remained to sleep on Liliana's breast, and Liliana summoned the nurse to return him to the nursery. Grace and I made our excuses and departed. There were many unresolved questions when we spoke with Liliana, but we chose to postpone them for another day. Grace and I appeared to have an unwritten agreement not to press Liliana until she was ready to speak. Dinner with Grace was interesting because we had never had the opportunity to sit down and talk before. We talked about our personal lives, and she informed me she was from the Finger Lakes region of my state, where she was born and raised. She earned her undergraduate degree at Cornell and thereafter attended the Wharton School of Business in Pennsylvania. Her parents still remained in New York, and she visited once a year, usually around Christmas. She acknowledged dating someone, although the relationship was not exclusive. She was waiting for Mr. Right to arrive. Since learning Grace's age, I've unconsciously seen her as a woman rather than a young girl. We enjoyed a great evening together. And as Liliana had already informed her of my marital status, we didn't have to linger on it for long. By the end of the evening, I realized I might easily fall for Grace if I hadn't already committed to Scarlett. I planned to maintain our connection professional and cordial until I had resolve things in my mind before Liliana gave birth. I had considered deepening our connection. But I now had trust difficulties with her, similar to those I experienced with Scarlett. How could both women so simply give in to another man? Both were caught and must face the repercussions of their crimes. Scarlett, we risk losing our marriage, and Liliana will have to live with the memories of betraying the man she loves. This saddened me and I had no idea how to handle it. I determined I couldn't take any further action until I handled my difficulties with Scarlett. I'd previously set some criteria for continuing our marriage in our separation agreement. So I'd stick to them for now. This meant calming down with both Liliana and Grace. Until I learned the outcome of my marriage. Over the next 2 weeks, I continued to work at the office and spent time with Liliana. Liliana's mother had arrived to help, allowing her to rest and recover. I often went out to lunch with Grace and we got along well. It felt like she expected more from me, but I kept my decision to prioritize my marriage. Scarlett and I talked most evenings, and she kept me posted on her progress with the psychologist. The lie detector tests verified that she was speaking the truth about only being with Matthew once and never cheating on me with anybody else. This information did not surprise me. She informed me that the psychologist will submit a preliminary evaluation report by the end of the month. Liliana, Dylan's lover, returned home and was informed of the baby's paternity. Liliana stated that he received it nicely and declared his readiness to support and raise the child. He rapidly established a regular presence at Liliana, his condo, returning frequently to see his kid. I met Dylan, and while he appeared to be a decent enough guy, I couldn't help but question his character. How could he woo his best friend's wife while she was vulnerable? Of course, weakness or drunkenness, like in Scarlett's case, was not an excuse for infidelity. This event encouraged me to do additional soul-searching. What about Scarlett? Her excuse was that she was exhausted and drank too much. Who can you trust? If I fell in love and married Grace, could I trust her more than Liliana or Scarlett? Will she get the 7-year itch and cheat on me while I doubt myself? I traveled on business. Would I be able to decline in advance if it came my way while I was away from home? Probably not. I discovered that staying faithful takes conscious effort. It is up to each individual to recognize that the vows or pledges we make to another person are significant and necessary for the maintenance of a long-term relationship. This moment of insight may help me make a decision about my marriage. 10 years later, things were abnormally quiet at home. The kids were in bed, and my wife was on the phone with her mother in the kitchen. I was lounging on my lazy boy, watching ESPN. They were examining highlights from the French Open in Paris. As expected, Federer and Nadal both proceeded to the finals in straight sets. They'd compete for the championship. I heard my wife complete her call and enter the room. She sat on the couch. Mom says Dad will retire next year. He asks her to think about where she wants to travel. I proposed Hawaii, or perhaps even Fiji. What is wrong with Cancun? We went there for our second honeymoon and had a wonderful time. Some may be shocked that I reconciled with Scarlett following the period of adjustment stated in our separation agreement. I realized she was the best long-term option. We'd both been severely upset by her betrayal, and I knew she was truly sorry. I forgave her, but I couldn't forget. It was a tiny cloud that would hang over our marriage for a long time, but I knew she would never allow it happen again. I became more cautious about avoiding situations where temptation could occur. Scarlett quit drinking alcohol completely. When we went out, She only drank Diet Coke and made sure I knew where she was at all times. Over time, we developed a trusting and loving relationship, and we eventually decided to start the family we both desired. Her psychologist had indicated that Matthew was a womanizer who exploited women's emotional needs. Scarlett was debating whether she wanted to have a child or pursue her job. Matthew flattered her, and with the help of alcohol persuaded her that her career was more important. This emphasis on her job reduced the significance of our marriage, in her mind. Liliana married Dylan. They dated and finally married. Having a child together must have affected their decision. But I questioned whether it would be enough to overcome the betrayal. It must have been genuine affection, because last I heard, they had another child. Liliana concluded that being a mother was more important than being vice president. Grace found Mr. Right and eventually landed the vice president position Liliana had passed up. She had no children according to what I've heard. Life had taken unexpected turns for all of us, but we eventually found our pathways and reconciled with our pasts. I know some will be disappointed with the ending. When you reach the finish, you may write the ending. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.